Because you see, the will of God will be going on in his life. Because that's what's happening in the kingdom. Just the will of God. So we've said all of that to indicate one thing. That sin cannot go on in God's kingdom. Sin is a diametric opposition to the nature and the character of God. Any man that is sinning must be honest with God and himself. If I'm sinning, I'm not in the kingdom. There was a fella in the kingdom eons past possibly that decided within his own self to do with himself what he wanted to do. Jesus said, I saw him. I saw him fall as lightning from the sky. Because you see, disobedience to God in that kingdom cannot exist. So how can we? How could we? How should we think any other thing is possible with us? Either we have never entered the kingdom, or we're in the kingdom. There is no shadow line of gray. You're either in the kingdom or you're out of it. And if you're out of it, you're doing somebody else's will. Because if you're in it, you're doing God's will. There is no, well, maybe I'm partitioned close by the door, Brother Skip. Fine, but that ain't good enough. Because the prayer's not answered in your life for the kingdom to be done and the will of God to be done here. So tonight, let's look at some verses. Let's see how to go in the kingdom. Because truly, brothers and sisters, if we're not there, all our life is vanity and vexation. We have no purpose of being in existence outside the kingdom. Because if we're outside the kingdom, we're spreading the kingdom of the other fellow. We're aiding in its spreading. We want that to cease in our life. So, and I'm persuaded also, brothers and sisters, that we need to tell men and women emphatically what they're up against to go in this kingdom. And not just sugarcoat it. Not just tell them something, well, we can have a little bargain kind of believism here and go in the kingdom and everything's going to be fine. Let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. It takes a holy warfare to enter God's kingdom. One, as the Muslims may say, jihad got to break out against a man's soul, and it will if he gets a glimmer of the entrance way to go into the kingdom. And he gets that glimmer when God opens the eyes of his understanding and points him to the way of the entrance and says to his heart and soul, come this way now, walk therein. Brothers and sisters, he's going to be resisted powerfully. And he may experience an awful lot of pain. An awful lot of pain may come his way because he's seen the direction to go in clearly by the eyes of his understanding. He's seen the direction and he started for it. And the enemy knows that he saw it. And he wants to stop him. So a man has to be minded a certain way. He has to be instructed to be minded a certain way. That this entrance to the kingdom, if he admits within himself that he's not in it, he's going to encounter a formidable foe. Not just a little peanut fella. He's going to encounter an enemy who will, by the allowance of God's grace, do to him what God will let him do. And God will allow this man to be tried and tested. Every man's faith must be tried, must be tested. That's why the Bible says, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial that has come to try you, as though something strange happened. You ought to have been told from the pulpit to expect it. Somebody should have told you from the pulpit, you headed for the kingdom, you got a war in front of you. Somebody should have told you that. Rather than walk off after you come shake a preacher's hand, babble a few words, and tell you you're in the kingdom. That's foolishness of the highest order. Let's read the Bible. 1 Peter chapter 4 tells a man how he should be thinking. Tells a man what state of mind he should possess concerning entrance into the kingdom. 1 Peter chapter 4, the apostle writing to believers much as we are, for as much then as Christ has suffered for us in the flesh. My God, we can stop right there, brothers and sisters. That says a mouthful. For as much then as Christ has suffered for us in the flesh, look at the life of Christ. What did the fella go through? First off, they took him to the judgment hall and judged him for all kind of blasphemy and stuff that wasn't true. Then they scourged him. Then they crowned him with thorns. Then they put a tree on him. Then they beat him and spit on him and cursed him, carried him up the side of a mountain he went. When he got to the top by the aid of Simon, what happened? They nailed him to a tree. They nailed a man to a tree. For as much then as Christ has suffered for us in the flesh. Look at the next verse. Arm yourselves. Arm yourselves. Because I'm persuaded, brothers and sisters, that the enemy will treat you with no less love than he treated Christ. You see, he had no affinity for Christ. Zero. And for the sheep that hear his voice, Brother Ivan, and follow him in this passageway, he has no affinity for them either. And as I've said before, he will do to a man what God will allow. God allowed his son, his only begotten son, to be crucified on a tree for the purpose of freeing men from the dominion of sin. Now arm yourself likewise. Be prepared in the temple of your heart and mind, and know that there is an affliction in front of a man. A great fire, if you will, in front of a man who is to lay hold to the kingdom. Now arm yourself that way, with that thought process, because there's a reason. Because he that has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin. He's come to the place in his life where sin stopped. He's reached a point, a spiritual place where sin stopped in his life. Where did it stop? Where is there no sin? We just said it a little while ago. In the kingdom, sin cessation and entrance into the kingdom is the very same thing. Going into the kingdom is sin cessation. Continuing to sin, no kingdom. Notice, and that kingdom is down here on the earth. Look at the next verse. That he no longer should live the rest of his time in the flesh,